Hi, YouTube. Welcome to the Unnecessary Nonsense Podcast Newsroom, which apparently needs more furnishings or more lighting or both. So I thought I'd hop on and make a bit of a video now that week 2 of the Alliance of American Football is concluded. We actually talk a fair bit about that on the podcast that is on this channel, so it is kind of a combination cross promotion thing. But at the same time, I thought it'd be really good to actually have a video on YouTube as a video platform. So I wanted to take a minute and talk a little bit about week 2 of the Alliance of American Football, and we're going to have more thoughts on it on the actual podcast itself, and I'll talk about that at the end. But for now, I'm going to do kind of a picture-in-picture thing, so hopefully it kind of works out. So I'm going to focus in on using the AAF website because it's probably the easiest way to kind of show the statistics and things that I want to talk about. So for the moment, we're going to focus in on week 2 scores here. So based on that, I really want to focus in on kind of the Saturday games first, beginning with the Salt Lake City Stallions versus the Birmingham Iron, and then afterwards the Arizona Hotshots versus the Memphis Express. Overall, I would say that the Stallions Iron game was okay. Part of it was that the reoccurring theme of the league is still kind of in effect, where a lot of the defenses are still taking advantage of the offenses not being completely in sync. So first I'm going to focus in on the Salt Lake Stallions Birmingham Iron game. So you can see right here from the breakdown in the box score is that Salt Lake was up 9-0, and it was the reoccurring theme of the Saturday with the comebacks. So they were up 9-0 against Birmingham, and then Birmingham came back to score a touchdown in the third quarter and a touchdown in the fourth quarter. If you're not aware of the Alliance of American Football, scoring rules, you have to try for a 2-point conversion. So the likelihood is you're basically going to get 6 points or 8 points, depending on how good your 2-point conversions are. So Birmingham is still kind of working on their offense. They did score 2 touchdowns in the latter portion of the game to come back, and they outscored Salt Lake 12-0 in the third and fourth quarter, and that was the difference in the game. Which in and of itself is fine, but it was a bit misleading in the sense that Salt Lake actually played very well on defense. So it kind of gets lost in the shuffle here, given that it was really kind of a low-scoring 3-point game. But also at the same time, looking at just the statistics on their own really isn't going to show you a proper picture. So hopefully you can see it on the screen that I'm showing you here. But specifically, I want to tune in and focus in on Luis Perez. So 184 yards really isn't going to stand out as anything too impressive, but I would say it was a bit deceptive because the 184 yards also included a lot of major drops, including a drop in the end zone that probably could have bolstered the stats and made them look a lot better. I did see a lot of poise from Luis Perez in the pocket, and also I did see a lot of throws that probably should have been caught. And this is going to be a reoccurring theme that probably will carry over into week 3. We're going to see if these receivers start converting some of these passes that are hitting them in the hands and hitting them right around the chest level. It's one thing to make or not make contested catches. You always know that's going to be kind of hit or miss, but that's the contested catches are really what separates the NFL wide receivers versus the receivers in this league. If these receivers are even going to consider themselves as possibly being able to audition for the next level in a league like this, and they want to showcase their skills, you have to make the quote-unquote easy catches. If you're not going to make the ones that are put in your hands, you're going to have a real tough time showing off to anybody if you can make some circus catches. The other standout really from this game was that Trent Richardson, who is probably the biggest name in terms of NFL experience, was kind of struggling in this one. Only 41 rushing yards on 19 attempts. He did lead the team in receiving, but that's with 50 yards. So again, not really a standout performance for him. 2.2 yards a carry isn't really going to get it done. Trent Richardson did get a touchdown, so it's one of those things where, as the line play improves, that's probably going to create a few more holes for the Trent Richardsons of the world. But we're going to see if he improves going forward. So that's all I'm going to say probably about the Salt Lake Stallions game. Unfortunately, Salt Lake is just kind of out of luck so far through 2 weeks in the AAF. Birmingham is 2-0, but they still have a lot of room for improvement in the sense that I would like to see their offense start to pick it up if they're going to really try to contend, because some of the other teams are able to put up some points. Now, speaking about the second game here, we're talking about the evening game on Saturday, was Arizona also coming back against Memphis. Now, unfortunately for Memphis, that makes them 0-2, and they haven't looked good for the most part, and in particular this time around, they blew a 12-0 lead, which at the time was, as the memes will tell you, the biggest lead in AAF history blown. Overall, they ended up losing 20-18 to Arizona, who scored 20 points in the second half and outscored Memphis 20-6 in the third and fourth quarters. They really started to only get their offense kind of clicking in the fourth quarter mostly, scoring 14 points. And it wasn't the most impressive performance out of Arizona coming off the first week where they looked really good. And their defense is still a little bit suspect. I would say they're still kind of in the top tier of teams. The teams have started to slowly separate themselves a little bit. But the big thing as far as this Arizona game is that as poor as Memphis played, Arizona gave them every opportunity. I will say that being an admitted fan of Arizona, I had a rooting interest, but at the same time, watching them go down 12 to nothing in the first half, I didn't really feel any sense of urgency with it. Even though you don't want to get down 12 nothing, I looked on the other side and I saw Hackenberg. The truth is, Hackenberg really hasn't shown me anything that would suggest. Whereas maybe with another team with that demonstrate a little bit more on defense and also could actually put up some points, I'd have been a little more worried. I felt that if Arizona could get some kind of rhythm in the second half, that they were going to come back, which is what they ended up doing. So looking really quickly at this, Wolford John Wolford threw for 194 yards. Not super impressive. A highlight for Memphis, I suppose, was that Zach Stacy became the first running back in league history to rush for over 100 yards, getting 101 yards, which is good for him. Overall, there wasn't really a lot of highlights here. Deshaun Downey, 2 sacks. It was not exactly the most entertaining game to watch. So the 2 Saturday games kind of had that in common. Although I will say that I do like watching the Birmingham Iron do their version of the defense. And also, I do enjoy the fact that they are pretty much the Miami Sharks from any given Sunday, if you've ever seen that movie. Otherwise, there wasn't really a lot to this game. That's kind of the Saturday slate, not the more exciting one. There was a much better game on the Sunday slate, which I'm going to talk to about now. All right, so talking about the Sunday slate specifically brings me to the best game of the weekend, and probably the game that I wish kind of had been the Sunday capper, rather than the one we ended up getting, was on the CBS Sports Network, which was the Orlando Apollos beating the San Antonio Commanders 37-29, which was more of the back and forth game. So San Antonio got up 12 to nothing and ended up losing that game, but that's the second straight 12 nothing lead that they've had that they've blown. But they're 1-1 on the season. The highlight, I would say, other than the game itself and the back and forth nature of it, which was very exciting, was the San Antonio crowd. So I would give a shout out to the San Antonio crowd, who was really tremendous on the 2 opening weeks of the AAF, specifically 27,000 in the opening night, and then 29,000 in the game on Sunday afternoon. Specifically, Orlando is really demonstrating that they really do have they have an explosive offense, but it's an inconsistent offense. So specifically, I'm going to look a little bit behind the numbers here. Obviously, this game went all the way to the fourth quarter, where pick 6 kind of decided it, but you did have a little bit of offense. Orlando really seems to rely a lot on the big home run play. And you'll see kind of the way the stats broke down that it really ended up being the case of one wide receiver really torching. So overall, Garrett Gilbert really stood out and became the first 300-yard passer in the history of the AAF. But specifically, a lot of that came off of Charles Johnson getting 192 yards receiving. Kenneth Farrow led the whole game in rushes, but it was 74 yards, which isn't terrible, but it kind of gave San Antonio a little bit of balance. The problem, I would say, the biggest difference was that whereas Garrett Gilbert was very much feast or famine, obviously when they got big chunks of yards, including a 54-yard reception that went to Charles Johnson, other than those big plays, it was few and far between, but the 2 offenses did move the ball around a little bit, where I would say the biggest difference is that Logan Woodside started off strong, and then in the second half got a lot more erratic. In contrast to kind of the Birmingham Iron game that I was talking about earlier, this is more of a case of the quarterback making errant throws and dangerous throws. He was throwing into a lot of very tight windows, and this was a situation where even if his receivers had been up to the task, he wasn't making it easy for them. And the big play of the game really towards the end in the fourth quarter was Keith Reeser getting the interception that was brought in for a touchdown, and that was the difference in the game. Also, that Orlando has demonstrated they're very good. They're probably the best in the league right now at converting the 2-point conversions. So being able to do that consistently is going to be a huge key for a lot of these teams, because right now it's 6 points or 8 points. That's all you're going to have. And if you can consistently get those 8 points, you're going to be able to start putting some distance between yourselves. The other big thing was that a lot of the Orlando wide receivers, when they made those big plays, they were getting a lot of separation, which really was a big difference in the game. Logan Woodside is going to have to improve his accuracy if he's going to hang in there, especially against a team who is capable of exploding on offense, even if they don't do it with the consistency. So good on Orlando for being 2-0, and good on the San Antonio crowd for supporting the team in the early stages of a nascent league. So that leads me to the last game of the weekend on the Sunday night. So this was on NFL Network. You had the San Diego Fleet taking on the Atlanta Legends. Overall, San Diego played better. It was a case, though, that neither team really was really impressive. If you take it, it was 9-6 at the half. It was tied through three quarters, 9-9. And then finally, some points were scored late in the fourth quarter. So it really wasn't an impressive offensive display. Both teams are still kind of struggling on offense. They're really trying to work a way around those consistency issues I was talking about with some of the quarterbacks and receivers. A lot of the teams really have that problem where either the quarterback is still kind of having a problem getting in sync with the receivers, or the receivers themselves are really struggling to make those routine plays that would extend drives and really start to increase the scoring. I'm hoping that as we go into week 3, week 4, week 5, you start seeing some of those plays get converted, and if you start seeing that, the scoring overall is going to go up. Orlando's already got a little bit of that going on, but they're a little bit inconsistent. San Antonio showed some signs of putting together a decent offense, and Arizona can, in spurts, be able to put together some offense. But again, consistency is going to be the key with a lot of these teams. It ended up being, there were moments, flashes of what could be. Scheduling is going to kind of play a bit of a role where it's going to be matchups with these teams, and also, fortunately and unfortunately for the viewer, since the schedules are kind of locked in and they don't have the ability to flex a lot of these games, you're going to have a lot of cases like this, where on the Sunday, the early game was the one that probably you could have predicted most likely would have been the more interesting one, but you end up with the one in the evening, which probably wasn't so great, and unfortunately, that's the one the primetime audience got. But just the same, we can talk about this one. Matt Sims led the whole game in passing, 160 yards. Not really enough amazing performance. There were no real other standouts for me. I watched the game and I kind of went to the multi-screen life a little bit on that one, where I had another event going on the other screen while I was trying to watch the game. I want to give them a little bit more of a chance, but I need to see some more out of Atlanta. And at the same time, I still haven't seen anything from San Diego that would excite me. I will give them credit because San Diego did have the second 100-yard rusher in league history with 104 yards. So that is now the new standard. We're going to see if these lines start doing a little bit of a better job creating these holes, and we can see some more balance in the running attack of a lot of these teams. So those are my thoughts on week 2 of the Alliance of American Football. If you enjoy videos like this where we actually have a real video, then leave a thumbs up, and we'd love to get any comments you might have. We appreciate the feedback. As far as the channel itself, I'm going to bring it to your attention here. It's called the Unnecessary Nonsense Podcast, which hopefully is the channel you're watching this on. It's a weekly podcast that I create with my co-host Dave, where we talk about various sports topics. Right now we're focusing in on the 2019 MLB season, which is coming closely and quickly. So focusing on a division at a time, we're going to be talking about the National League Central shortly. Every week we do publish a podcast where we talk about various things that come up. We've already talked about the previous NFL season towards the end of it, including the Super Bowl, and now we're focusing in on the AAF. But going forward, if you want to check out any of our podcasts, you can do so. Feel free to subscribe to the channel, but we also have available a Podbean website where you can download the podcasts themselves, including previous ones we've already done. We're also available currently on Spotify and Google Play Music, and we're trying to finish getting approval so that we can get on iTunes, which we'll announce as soon as we're capable of. For the Unnecessary Nonsense Podcast, I'm Carlos, and I appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time.